Sometimes I stand here looking at myself without knowing that I'm here. I'm watching what would wind up being Ingrid Bergman's Swan song and Ingmar Bergman's last film for theatrical release. All of his subsequent ones would wind up being for television. Still, it's a production of a lot of firsts. It's the first time that Ingrid Bergman and Ingmar Bergman, no relation, would wind up working together. It's the first time in 11 years that Ingrid would wind up acting in her native tongue. And it's the first British-Norwegian venture for Ingmar, who shot this in Norway through a West German production company due to being in voluntary exile from Sweden over tax evasion. Simply on its historical value alone, Autumn Sonata is a compelling watch. But don't worry, there's no shoe drop here. Included in the Criterion Collection at spine number 60, and in Letterboxd's top 250 narrative films of all time, Autumn Sonata is compiled with a lot of pieces of filmmaking that will reach all viewers. And much like a sonata, there are three key aspects: cinematography, acting, and narrative. Tight, claustrophobic shots of only a handful of characters set amongst a distinct autumn color palette permeate this film. It would be easy for Autumn Sonata to feel as though it was caught in the time period it was shot, the late 1970s, as this color palette is highly associated with the era. Yet, there's a sort of deftness with his use of faded browns, whites, oranges, and even the sparing use of red and green that really help evade this label. If you're looking for a wonderful example on how to shoot the human face while delivering lines directly to camera, this is your masterclass. Bergman seems both obsessed and yet entirely successful with these shots because while they are frequent, they are used with such appropriateness for the timing and the point in the story in which they occur that they are utterly successful. And that was always the goal here, to show us that art is a better form of communication than words. Even if you can't get on board with a story about generational trauma and the roles we place women in society, or the overwhelming magic of seeing cinematography that lifts the narrative beyond the de rigueur of modern filmmaking, Autumn Sonata is a showcase in acting. You can literally see the clash between Liv Ullmann's modern European style of acting and with Ingrid Bergman's classic Hollywood style, just as we would see the contrast in their performance of the Chopin Sonata. And this tension in styles really floods the screen with warm, contrasting tones. I found myself astonished that they were able to be held in the same frame without any skip in the amount of wonderful harmony between these contrasts. Which brings me to the narrative. How do you create dialogue in a film that is purposefully condemning language's ineffective nature when compared to art, such as music? You use it to point out that very fact. As Ava says to her mother about why she stopped trying to share her true feelings, you had taken charge of all the words. You show them almost connecting over their interpretation of Chopin, and then the flood of messy, truthful words that wind up coming out once that line of communication is created through music. I will note that movies like Autumn Sonata, where there is this amount of tension and conflict between parents, can be deeply universal. However, they can also be deeply uncomfortable. This might be the most appropriate reason to be unable to appreciate this film. And to think, it almost didn't happen. Ingmar recalls the last time he saw Ingrid Bergman was at the Cannes Film Festival during a screening of Cries and Whispers. She snuck a note into his pocket in which she reminded him of a promise that they would someday make a film together. From that desire came the script for Autumn Sonata, which Ingmar recalls having written in one night in a matter of hours after a period of writer's block. Now, should you find yourself disconnected from the three parts of this composition, you're likely still capable to engage in one of the remaining two. And that's what I find so enduring about Bergman's work. A critic of his once said, "It's entirely possible to enjoy the instrumentals and dislike the composition." Although, I would challenge viewers to find themselves completely missed or unmoved entirely by this film. It's simply too well constructed, too dense, and too complex to not feel like you're consuming a feast. And considering that Bergman used Autumn Sonata in many of his pieces to address the question, why make art? I find that this is an apt answer.